Welcome to the Event Pro Show, your ultimate guide to the world of corporate events. Whether you're a corporate event planner, experiential marketing pro, producer, technician, or anyone involved in creating exceptional events, this podcast is your go-to resource for valuable insights, expert tips, and inspiring stories from the industry's leading professionals.
Well, hello, I'm Seth Macchi, and welcome to the Event Pro Show. I'm really excited about our guest today. And Deanna, if it's okay, I'm going to actually read your whole bio right now. We're going to talk about some really cool issues around planning and events. But let me read this bio because it's probably one of my favorite bios. So with an illustrious career spanning over 2 decades, Deanna Griffith-House stands as a beacon of excellence in the realm of global trade shows and meeting strategy and planning. Renowned for exceptional leadership and visionary strategies, Deanna has garnered accolades and awards as a strategic leader in the MICE, that's meetings, incentives, conferences, and exhibitions industry, for those of us that are following along at home. I got that right?
You got it right. It was perfect.
Cool. Deanna brings to the table a rich background in complex project management, honed through years of orchestrating high-profile events on a global scale. Her expertise extends beyond mere logistics, encompassing event portfolio strategy and implementation, which I want to ask you about. That's a bonus question later, with a meticulous eye for detail. Throughout her career, Deanna has been a driving force in cross-functional leadership, seamlessly integrating teams from diverse backgrounds to achieve shared objectives. Her proficiency in high-tech marketing adds a dynamic edge to her approach, ensuring events are not only flawlessly executed, but also strategically aligned with organizational goals. You're a master of process optimization, and that's speaking a love language for me. Deanna has proven track record for streamlining operations and maximizing resources to deliver unparalleled outcomes. Her strategic acumen is matched only with her ability to conceptualize innovative event experiences that captivate audiences and leave a lasting impression. Please welcome to the show, Deanna Griffith-House.
Thank you. I'm exhausted, so I'm going to go take a nap now from that.
I'm going to take a drink real quick.
Exactly. From that wonderful introduction. Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. But there's so much to your background that people could learn from. And there's a lot of hot button issues here for me. So not just the MICE thing that I outlined, but project management, logistics, you've got portfolio strategy and implementation consultation, which is really cool. Marketing, which you mentioned earlier when we were talking, process optimization, operations, and then even experiential.
Yep.
So much to pull from, so many cool things. But before we dive in, I wanted to ask you just kind of an opening question that I really am interested to ask everybody that we talk to is, thinking back in your life, what is like the first memory of attending an event? Maybe like being a kid, or the first event that made an impression on you.
This takes me back. So it's county fair. I was a 4-H'er. My entire family were 4-H'ers. My mother was a 42-year 4-H advisor. I was camp counselor on the junior fair board, the whole thing. And so you prepared every year to go to the fair, and I did everything from cooking demonstrations to showing ducks, geese, and rabbits.
Wow.
Don't have any of those anymore. To canning vegetables and sewing clothing that you then modeled. So a county fair is really my first memory of an event, and it was multi-day. And then of course, if you excelled at the county level, I grew up in the state of Ohio, you then could be elevated to go take whatever the 4-H project was to the state fair, and repeated that presentation or demonstration, et cetera, at the state fair. And it was months and months of preparation for that event, and I was just a participant. I wasn't the event planner.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I get the feeling that in a post-apocalyptic world, you would be one of the few people that could survive.
I think so, because I could figure out how to do fill in the blank.
Right.
Can vegetables, sew, et cetera.
Do you think you pull from that memory even now, like doing
Absolutely. And as I'm sitting here, I'm in my mind going through the 4-H pledge, the 4-H's, which is what it stands for. Can
you say them?
I pledge my head to clear thinking, my heart to greater loyalty, my hands to better service, and my health to better living for my club, my community, my country and my world.
That's the 4-H's?
That's the 4-H's.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Obviously
Obviously.
would not survive in the post-apocalyptic world.
Well, you know, when you grew up in a family of 4-H, even my grandmother was a 4-H advisor. It's droned in on you time after time, and I loved it. My family still goes to the county fair, where I grew up in Marysville, Ohio.
That's very cool. That's very cool. What's the closest big town to Marysville?
Columbus.
Columbus.
It's about
Okay.
30 miles northwest of Columbus.
Okay, cool. Cool. Love Ohio.
OH.
OH. I don't.
IO.
Am I supposed to be, is this like a,
The Buckeye thing.
oh, sorry. Okay.
The
So full
Ohio State
disclosure,
University.
I'm not a Buckeye fan,
I
but
could tell.
I like the state. A big fan of Bob Evans.
Yes,
So,
yes, yes.
When I have a few questions, preliminary questions here, but from that experience, when was the first time that you can remember wanting to be involved in events as like a career? Like when it clicked in your mind that, hey, this is what I want to do, or did it come to you a different way? Like people come at it from different directions.
I don't know that I ever actually actively said, I want to be an event planner. I started my career in marketing, a degree in PR. So, you know, companies at the time, and, 5 minutes ago, companies, if you were in marketing, you did whatever was needed to be done for marketing. And so I had a kind of a penchant for detail and making things happen. So when the company I worked for at the time, which no longer exists, was folded in 4 and 5 times over, decided to do a sales meeting because I was in marketing and I could pay attention to detail. They said, hey, Deanna, you plan it. And away I went. And I learned over time that, hey, this is actually enjoyable and I'm really good at it. And so I then made a conscious decision to stay involved in the events industry. Took a left turn in project management for a while, but even my team managed events, along with technology integrations and strategy, those kinds of things. So that's how I kind of broadened beyond the traditional meeting planning or event planning. I think meeting planning is such a small title for what those people do in the industry.
Agreed.
It's too small, but I'll use it because it's a common term. And so that allowed me to do other things, but still staying true to my core. Event planning, meeting planning is really what I love to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So you found something that you loved.
Yes.
And it clicked.
Absolutely.
So what then were some of your first jobs in the events industry?
I worked for a long distance telecom company when long distance was a thing. I'm
Right.
dating myself now.
I remember I wasn't allowed to make long distance calls.
No, exactly. I barely remember the party lines when you picked up the phone and there was
Oh,
somebody else
really?
on the,
Yeah, yeah.
barely. Like
Yeah.
that was, when I was very, very young.
Uh,
But I did everything from in-person customer events to sponsorships. We talked a little bit earlier about my involvement in the IndyCar and racing world. We sponsored a car in both IndyCar and NASCAR, so I managed those programs, went on site quite a bit with those. And those were to host and entertain and endear, if you will, big customers. Like the state of Ohio was a customer of the long distance telecom company. So we hosted the telecom manager at the state of Ohio, those kinds of things. So it just kind of continued to parlay into incentives, into trade shows, et cetera. And once you understand the core elements or tenets of event planning, it can take you wherever you want to go.
right.
Really broaden it from there.
Right. And now from those first jobs, fast forward, you right now, what are you passionate about and what are you working on in 2025?
Yeah.
Like, what are you wanting to work on?
So I took, as I mentioned, I took a left turn into project management. And about a year and a half ago, I kind of, like most of us did post-pandemic, said, this is not what I want to do full time anymore. I still enjoy project management, but it's not my passion. So I took the bold leap of leaving my job after 12 years with the big support of my husband, and decided to kind of throw, lack of a term, caution to the wind, and started my own independent planning business. Well, where I'll still do independent planning, like hire me, I can pull something together, make it sing, etc. But really what I enjoy doing is getting into the nuts and bolts as to why you're doing an event and what your event portfolio looks like using your data. So it's, you provide me with your client personas, your customer data, your sales goals, your company goals, and I work, to put together a persona based on the events that you're doing and that data and say, you really should stop doing these types of things or going to this trade show because no one you want as a client is in that trade show anymore, participating, attending. Continue doing these, but instead of, taking an incentive trip to a large city every year, perhaps switch it up and take it, go to New Zealand or go to an island. And when I talk about incentives, it's not just employee incentives, it's client incentives too, because there's a
Right.
big mix of it and people misunderstand that there's a difference between those two. And then continue doing X, and it's based on data. And what I'm seeing more and more as I work with clients is people want to get back to in-person events and gatherings. So, I worked for a software company for a long time, and we did a lot of in-person events where we hosted the IT leaders and talked about the updates that we were pushing out through the software. Well, they're missing those, and not that they can't get the updates electronically because we all do it every day, but it's the interactions with other people who are going through the same trials and tribulations they are. That's what people are wanting to get back to, and we're seeing it more and more in all the data the meetings industry has.
What I think is interesting about what you're doing is just as a human, as a member of human beings, I reach a point where I can't read any more emails. Like I
Yes.
literally, there's like a point in time where my mind is done. But if I can step away and for important things, getting face to face and
Yes.
working through
It's
issues,
huge,
learning,
huge.
it's just the way that we're wired. I think most people are wired. And I think you touch on a really important point there. And tying back to what I find really interesting is I'm a big believer in time management.
Yes.
As I get older, I find that, we definitely have this finite time. And so breaking up your day in what is a high value use of my time versus low value.
hmm
And you cut like anything that's not, the top 20% of your time usually is doing the biggest impact. And if
Yes.
you can get rid of most of the other stuff through various methods, you become more effective. And I think in a portfolio of events, it's interesting that you're doing that for people to say, hey, if you have 100 events a year, actually the top 20 are getting you like 80% of
Yes.
your impact.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you can focus and do better on those. That's interesting to me. That's an interesting
And
concept.
not necessarily automatically cut the other ones out,
hmm
but let's look at those from a value add to your customers.
hmm
And most of what I'm talking about is business to business. I don't really,
hmm
I have done consumer work. It's not my bailiwick.
Right.
Most of it's business to business. But let's evaluate those from a pure play. What's it adding to your customers first, and
Right.
then to you as a business second?
hmm
One of my favorite sayings I ever heard, and this has been years I heard it, well, I have 24 hours in a day, same 24 hours. How are you going to spend it? And getting back to your email comment, I was in my former role, I was at the point where I was getting over 375 emails a day for projects I was managing. There's no way you can be effective
That sounds
in
miserable.
anything.
Yeah.
You could, all you were doing was reading emails
hmm
and responding, oh, I'm going to look at this later. And so to your point, the more that you can accomplish in a shorter amount of time is
Yeah.
better. And so in-person meetings are perfect for that because you can check off, and I hate to use those terms, check off, hey, we've engaged with 15 customers, we've got, you always get additional sales out of it, which is always a bonus, but you've endeared your clients to you more and are more readily to be part of like a customer reaction group or a customer feedback loop, et
Yeah.
cetera, because you've connected with them one-on-one. And that's the piece that the pandemic took away from all of us,
hmm
personally and professionally, and that the people that are in the industry now working, not meetings industry, but like the 30-year-olds, the 40-year-olds are missing that because a lot of them never had it
Yeah.
or forgot what it was like before the pandemic.
Yes. Yeah. And that time together is actually higher quality time as opposed to like a Zoom interaction
Yes.
or an email because I'm constantly distracted by my phone, or
Or
whatever
my dog
device.
barking at the
Dog, yeah.
doorbell.
Kids just came home from school, whatever. But when you're in person, you've got that, like you're looking eye to eye and there's no distraction. If you do it right, you're
Yes.
really, the time you spend together is just super high value. We can get a lot done. And I really believe in that. I think we both are big believers in that.
Yes.
And that's really the industry that we're in, is like, we're in the industry of people. And so people, relationships, people, and it's most effective face to face.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'm assuming when you no, when you call yourself an event strategy expert, this is what's like at the heart of what you're talking about.
Yes. And using the term expert to me just means I have experience in what I'm talking about.
I think that you're okay with using the word expert.
Well, I mean, people can overuse the word expert. I've been there. I've been through the trenches. I've stuffed the name tags. I've printed schedules off, 15 times. I've been the person at registration desk checking people and figuring out why they didn't pay, et cetera. Like, I have the experience. Been
Yeah.
there, done that. Would do it again in a heartbeat. But I think because of that experience, I can look at a portfolio or even just a single event and say, these are the great things you're doing. These are the things we can improve upon, and these are the things we really should not be doing as part of this event or you're part of your portfolio.
Right.
For various reasons. And a lot of it has to do with data. Now, data is black and white. It is what it is. There's a lot of gray in between the black and white pieces. And that's the piece that really, when I talk and work with clients, comes into play about, well, is there a reason that we do this event and it's really getting us nowhere? Well, it could be the owner of the company loves it and we're going to continue to do, okay, well, let's improve upon it instead of cutting it out. So
Right.
that's where the gray pieces come in when you deal with data.
That's where you need somebody that's been in the industry from the ground up, that understands, that can interpret the data. It's not just
Absolutely.
like cold, like the numbers say this, so we have to do that. Like, you've got to have experience. Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so in your as much as you'd like to talk about it,
Okay.
what are some examples of events you've observed that lack strategy versus those that were very strategic? And I guess you could be just general on that. So give an example of maybe an event that it's lacking strategy. Just, this is generic Expo 2025 that we've all been to before, that lacked, versus one that's super high impact that you love the concept.
So I'll give an example of something that I worked but didn't lead, if that makes sense. So I do a lot of, I should say a lot, I do some where people contact me and say, hey, I need staffing for a booth. I think you can do it, et cetera. And I'll help them out in part because it helps me evaluate the trade show overall for future clients. And as a matter of fact, this past summer, I worked with a healthcare technology company at a healthcare tech show, and they had a small booth. Fine. The booth was standard measure. It wasn't anything special, and that was part of the problem. Nothing unique about it. But the two people they had staffing the booth from the company and then me were constantly on their phone or not in the booth. And so you had somebody, myself, who, read 101 the day before I showed up and was asked to answer all these questions. Well, right there, bad booth staffing, horrible
Yeah.
issue, because they had people that were interested in what they were offering, but didn't have the right people in the booth to provide the answers. And then taking materials to a trade show booth in this day and age is ludicrous because it ends up in the trash can.
Yeah.
So it should either be scan this, we'll send it to you, or here's a flash drive, or something like that. This group had nothing but paper all over the booth. So there's a lot of things like, we all value paper when you want to sit and look at something. Like I'm a
Right.
reader and I love books. I don't want an e-reader. I want to physically get a book from the library and sit and read with it. That's
You
me.
like the
Yeah.
experience.
My husband loves the e-reader. We're
Yeah.
totally different. But none of us wants to lug all that paper home. So I think there was it's really looking at how you're presenting yourself to the world, or in this case to the healthcare technology sector, and figuring out, okay, well, we're missing the mark. And part of that also is walking around to see the other vendors or companies in the trade show of how they're presenting, and follow the crowds. Like, why are the crowds there? Is there a tchotchke given away? Which is not always the answer, don't get me wrong. Or is there a presentation they're doing that's really hitting the mark? Do your research. That's part of it. And then on the flip side, from like an internal event, I think you need to make sure that you have the right people presenting on the right topics for the audience. Always match the audience with people. I think it sounds very simple, but there's so many companies that miss the mark on matching the content to the audience, especially senior management. And I'm talking from history here. They have a tendency to talk. I used to work for a telecom company, and our CFO always talked about EBITDA. The average person doesn't know what that is, or even how to pronounce it or how to spell it. And so I actually encouraged him at one point to explain that to the employees, because we did it every quarter, but nobody knew what it was. And as soon as that happened, he then started getting conversation questions from the audience and email follow-up saying, hey, help me understand this a little bit more.
Yeah.
So stop, make sure you match the messaging to the audience. That's key in everything you do.
Yeah. I think that's powerful right there. I think with anything, the more you can simplify, it means the more you're, to use the word, expert of something. A subject matter expert should be able to explain in a simple way. And even in what you're talking about in your booth or how you're representing your company, it should be in a easy to understand, digest way, in a way that is now, like, not, when I was listening to you talk, it sounds like so many people work in a way of like, I'm checking off how we've always done it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of that curious, almost like entrepreneurial, like, how can we do this better? How can we make this better? And you don't have to launch a company to be an entrepreneur.
No.
You can have that same curiosity
and approach to your day job.
Exactly. And it's actually can keep it more exciting and interesting. Like, how are they doing it? What are they doing over there? That's literally the story of some of the biggest business people in the world. I think Sam Walton doing Walmart, he was original in a lot of what he did, but a lot wasn't. He would literally go to other stores all the time, other competitors, and make notes openly. Like they would know he's walking in.
Most people still do that today.
Yes. Yeah. Like, this is a concept that was kind of, he was a pioneer in that idea, but like, do that. Why not? Why not? We all borrow from each other. No one owns all of creativity, and other people have done it. So that's an example of how you could create a really boring experience for people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And give me an example of you've seen something where people are just, this is the way that it should be done, how it should be approached.
So I'll use a recent example. I was at IBTM, which is a global conference and trade show in Barcelona. First time I'd been there. And of course, one of the things that always attracts attention when you're at a trade show is the lines at a trade show booth.
Sure.
What are people standing in line for, et cetera? And I think, especially for those of us that are not exposed to cultures beyond our own all the time, we're fortunate in the meetings industry that we get that opportunity. But IBTM has a lot of Asian booths, et cetera, which is phenomenal. One of the longest lines was actually a fan, cool me off fan, where they wrote whatever you wanted them to in Chinese on that fan. And it was just something unique. You couldn't, bring back yourself unless you went and paid for it, whatever. And the line was horrendous. It was
simple as that too.
Yeah, but yet every time I look at that fan, I think about that booth and that country, et cetera. And I'm like, this was perfect. That's a great way to do it. And they had people talking to people in the line as they stood in that long line. And that also makes a difference. I think there's a miss for people, whatever the line is, whether it's registration for a conference or registration for a trade show. And there's always people standing in line. Always people standing in line. I think you should work that line. And whether that's just somebody that's really nice and, talkative, et cetera, your best customer service rep, have them talk to people, not even about business, like the weather or what's your favorite flower, your favorite flavor of ice cream, where do you get your peppermint shakes this time of year, that kind of stuff. And that endears people to your company and to the people that work for your company. And so it's, as you said, it's very simple stuff. And I think we've gotten so entangled with technology and doing the biggest and brightest thing that we've lost track of grassroots and basic marketing sense.
Yes. Sometimes I do feel like your tech stack gets so deep and it's like we're missing the point.
Yes.
We're trying to make people walk away with the information that we want them to walk away with. It doesn't have to be complicated. No. I mean, we literally can grab a Sharpie, get a bunch of fans, and do something unique to our culture so people like have a tie to it. It's very organic.
Yes.
And that's so cool.
You're spot on. Absolutely spot on.
Okay, so how can event pros be more strategic throughout the planning and execution of an event?
For me, I think if we look bigger picture and
Mhm.
then drill down to the smaller details,
Yeah.
it's better. I think, and I'm talking generals here, event planners have a habit of doing, okay, we got to get the site first. And now we got to talk about transportation. And then we got to talk about reservation dates, that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. We'll step back and have a planning session, bigger picture, so that you understand not only the timing of what needs to happen where, but as we were talking earlier, involve the elements of your program early in the process and not just when, oh yeah, it's an afterthought. And one of the things that always to me when I was doing full-time event planning event at the beginning was AV and busing. Transportation was always like, oh, I'll get
Mhm.
to when I get to it.
Yeah.
It should be part of the entire process because you're working with people that are very knowledgeable in definitely the city that you're working in, but also in events in general. Use their expertise, lean on their expertise to help it make your program more successful and make better sense. Why
Yeah.
would you, just using transportation, we have a habit of doing that at the very last minute. Well, work with a transportation company who knows the area and say, okay, well, instead of taking people here first and then here first, why don't we offer a loop or go this way first and come back around kind of thing? And it
Mhm.
makes it much simpler and a better experience for the attendees and easier for you and your team.
Yes. I am a big fan of that idea that, it's hard at first, you don't have any relationships, but over time, building core relationships of suppliers and partners, that it's no longer like, I have to write this RFP and I don't know I'm not an expert in these things. Why don't you just bring your partners into the planning table to where there's a trust of like,
Which helps write the RFP itself.
exactly. And it's no longer about like, I feel like I'm at a car lot and people are trying to upsell me. It's more like these are partners, they're in it for the long term and that's their goal. So I don't think they're going to try to rip me off on this thing. They're going to actually try have what you were saying, like, when we've been there before, you could do this, but if that's what you're trying to do, this venue, we were able to do this. Oh, well, that helped me make my venue decision, but it came from the logistics company, that was like, this is why we do that, because we can get here. So just bringing that group in, and you're so that's a wise point of like, you're farming all this talent, you're outsourcing it, and utilizing other people's
Yes, absolutely.
experiences.
And I think, just real quick, I think that perspective I learned through my project management
Hmm.
days and managing programs overall. Because if you're not familiar with project management, project is the smallest level or the most singular level, and it goes to program and then portfolio, so it builds up. So as I became a program manager, so I was overseeing a program about zebras, just totally making it up.
Hmm.
And the projects below it were things like the feeding and the where they're housed, et cetera. And it all built up to the program, and that fed into the portfolio. So if you look at it from the ground up, to bring things together as you're looking at it from the top down, it's a different way to look at things, but you understand, oh, this is how they all fit together,
Yeah.
and they need to come together.
Hmm. And I think that directly ties back to what you're doing now, where
Yes.
you're looking at your whole annual portfolio, that top-down view. I think when we work in this business of day to day trying to survive your
Mhm.
375 emails, if that's your world, you never can pull back and look at like, what's a smarter way to do the year? You're like, what's a smarter way to do the next minute?
Yeah,
If you're
exactly,
there,
exactly.
reevaluating how you're utilizing your time, and your resources.
And I think, I'm mentoring someone as part of the Site Southeast program right now, and we've been talking over the last couple of months. And she and I were just talking the other day about this time of year, people who go, "Oh, I'm going to take a breath. I'm still working, but I'm, going to just not do as much, et cetera." Well, now's the time to do the annual look ahead or
Yes.
even the annual look back, so
Hmm.
you understand. Okay, I could have done this better, and how could I have done it better? Yeah,
Hmm.
we're all exhausted, but I think if you put the time in at the end of the year, or even the very beginning of the year when there's no one else around and it's
Yeah.
quiet, it's the better for you because then you'll understand, oh, I could have done this different, or my team could have done this better, and how can we make it a change for next year?
Yes. Yeah. And so I don't know when you'll be listening to this, but we're recording this over the Christmas break or holiday break. And I totally agree with that. Having, I think overwork is such a killer of creativity. And as we really are in planner, in meetings, it is a creative industry. You have to give yourself room to be creative. And so down times are the perfect time to be kind of like, how can I be more strategic next year? Get out of, every year, every 6 months, every 3 months, what can I get rid of?
Yes.
What's the white noise I can get rid of in my life so I can focus on the main thing, not the little details, because it's just so, you can get addicted to the details.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for me, when I was working in a corporation every day, I'm not an early morning person, but I became an early morning person. I went into the office. My normal work hours were 8 to 5, whenever the last time any of us worked those straight hours is whatever. But I would be in the office 7:20, 7:15, and that the time before anybody else came into the office was when I did exactly that. Let me look ahead to my day. What could I have done differently yesterday or a week ago, et cetera? I've got to get these things accomplished. So then I was at least organized for at least the next minute before all the meetings started.
Yeah.
And I had my head wrapped around what the day needed to look like and what I needed to accomplish today before I moved on. And that was huge for me.
The most important part of the day,
Yeah.
for sure. Because the rest of the day,
And then you need to know when to stop at the end of the day, like walk away.
because it always keeps going.
And that means stop looking at your emails on your phone,
Right.
etc., which is hard to do.
I need to take some of your advice here.
I don't always follow my own advice.
Well, I'll ask you a few remaining questions. It's been such a great conversation. I feel like we could talk for probably hours about
Yeah.
events. But in your experience, you've been in events for a little bit, a minute.
Yeah,
You've
more than
been-
a minute.
Yeah, a couple minutes. And when you look out, like technology's changing so fast, but we are also dealing with a constant called human nature. What do events look like in 10 years? What does that experience look like in 10 years?
If you had asked me this question 2 years ago, I would have said virtual, 100%.
Right.
But I think, as we were talking earlier, human nature is to engage physically and face to face with other people, other humans. I think the pandemic taught us that, and the last couple of years taught us that in spades. And so I don't think we'll ever get rid of the need to be face to face. I think it will shift. I think there'll be different reasons why we meet face to face, but we'll always meet face to face. I feel like the trade show industry needs to change quite a bit because the information that you gain at a trade show can now be found online. So there needs to be a more
Right.
compelling reason for people to attend trade shows, but also companies to exhibit at trade shows. I think you'll see more and more of incentives or incentive type events, whether they label them incentives or not, because that's a whole tax thing, for both consumers and business clients. We all get those emails, fill out the survey and win a $100 Amazon gift card. I think we'll parlay that more into some experiences because that's what we're all hungry for. So I don't think we'll see it. I think we're going to see it continue to build. I think we're going to run out of availability before we run out of need, in my opinion.
Right.
But then that just makes it all better for the suppliers in the industry, harder for the planners. It's a trade-off, one way or the other.
There's always a trade-off.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
Okay, last question for you.
Okay, I'm ready.
What is your favorite event that you've ever been involved with? And maybe you can't answer this on a microphone. I don't know.
No, I
but
can't.
yeah.
I absolutely can't. So we were talking earlier. I worked in the kart or IndyCar series, kart at the time, and our last year race of the year was always in Fontana, California, the Mecca of the world, and I got involved in an organization called I forget what it's called now, but it was the auxiliary for the kart series. So the wives of the owners and the drivers and those kind of things. Got involved in that. And we held a fundraiser every year at the last race. And in this particular year, I was the chair of the event, partnered with one of the owners' wives. And the event was held on a runway in a hangar at the Fontana Airport. And we had the best event. We had Smash Mouth as the band because they were friends with one of the drivers. It didn't cost us a dime for them to play.
Oh, wow.
And it was just a phenomenal event. Like we had almost 1,200 people to attend that event, raised so much money for Kart Auxiliary. That's what it was called. And it was just like every perfect thing came together. We didn't have any squabbles amongst the people, so many personalities. No
Right.
squabbles, no issues, no anything. Even Paul Newman showed up because Paul Newman at one time, for several years, was an owner in the series.
Yeah.
And so he came, which was a big draw, big, splash for the organization. It was my favorite time in part because there was no drama.
Right. That's
There's
a big
always
one.
drama.
I mean, I love airplanes, so I'm a sucker for anything in a hangar.
Yeah.
But no drama. I'm
No
more
drama.
interested in that. That's an amazing sounding event. Well, if you're interested in the type of things we talked about, and I'm not planning on doing a plug on every single podcast, but I would say reach out to Deanna about your portfolio of businesses, and maybe you can work out some room in your life to focus more on what's important. And we'll tag you in everything that we post, so you'll be able to get a hold of Deanna in this. But thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being a guest on the Event Pro Show. It's been an enjoyable conversation. Maybe
I've
we can
enjoyed
have
it
you
too.
back.
Yeah, I'd love to. This has been fantastic. It's helped me relive some things I didn't realize I still knew the 4-H pledge.
Right. That was
And
pretty cool.
Now I'm going to go, on my way home, call one of my siblings to make them repeat it to me because we all did it,
Right.
and see if they remember as well. But this has been fabulous. I really appreciate the opportunity and the discussion. It was great.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us on the Event Pro Show. Keep joining our episodes, and we will keep putting out tips and tricks on how to make your life easier in the events industry. Thank you so much, and see you next time. The Event Pro Show is a production of LEMG, video by Nick Barrett, audio and post-production by Prince Thompson. You can learn more about us at lemg.live.